8.
An 8. Chris, today the design challenge we will be taking upon ourselves is one added by Peter Dillman, a recent guest on the podcast. And he proposed that we design an interesting shop.
Oh, like Costco?
I think that's what he had in mind, yes.
Hello, and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. I'm Chris Salzman.
And I'm Andy Rao.
Andy, we are now like 6 episodes or so, maybe 7, into Season 2. So I just wanted to check with you on air. Like, how are you feeling about Season 2?
I am feeling very good about Season 2. You know, in one way, it's what we're doing is not enormously different than what we used to. I mean, each episode we roll a random topic and then basically wind up discussing it. But I think it really helps me personally to have like an assignment attached to that topic. Mm-hmm. In this case, the assignment of create something, some sort of tangible gaming artifact. It helps me as I discuss it to be a little bit more focused. What about you?
Yeah, no, I like it too. Yeah, I think we've been talking a little bit about maybe like, what do we do with these after we're done, right? So we sort of finish and it's like, well, I guess take that and run with it if you want to. But yeah. I think we have some ideas for, like, how do we take maybe a handful of these and maybe do an actual play or something about them. So yeah, I'm putting that out there as, so you listeners, if you can think of a good way that we can actually use these things, let us know. I want to try to do that, I think, into the future. Because I mean, like, they're not like 100% solid gold ideas every time, but I think they're also pretty good. And it's a shame to just have them languish within these podcast episodes. Okay, so Andy, before we get into the topic, though, I did want to ask you, is there anything that you've been doing, gaming or media-wise that you want to talk about?
Oh, Chris, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Because the answer is yes. I have recently watched a couple of things that have gotten my jamming gears going. One relates closely to a recent topic on this podcast. I just watched a horror movie called The Deep House, which is, I think it's a relatively low budget horror film. And the premise is just that it follows a couple of like YouTube vloggers or influencers or whatever the term is, who like explore haunted places and stuff. And they dive into this lake in some creepy corner of Europe where there is like a well-preserved house down at the bottom of the lake. And because it was flooded due to some like a dam being opened or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
The reason I bring it up is because a couple of episodes ago we talked about making an underwater adventure. And I can confirm from watching this movie that taking a really mundane and cliched environment, and a creepy old house, and putting it underwater, that dramatically reinvents that space as a cool place to explore.
Interesting. So is this just like a standard run-of-the-mill house down there, or is it?
It's a creepy house, I'd say.
Okay, yeah.
It's you've seen it in every horror movie that has a house that you're supposed to be a little bit scared of, or where the house is a little bit is kind of a character in the film as well. It's got creepy stuff. People have left creepy dolls. It has an old piano. It has creepy paintings on the walls. But it's totally standard horror fare. And if you filmed the exact same movie except they were just walking through the house, it would not be exciting. But this, just with that gimmick of being underwater, the entire movie is literally them just going from room to room and being amazed or scared at what they find in each room.
Yeah, so I guess me. I guess, is this a movie that I should watch, or is this a movie that I should just maybe read the Wikipedia plot summary and move on with my life?
It's not super scarring or super hardcore. There's not much in the way of gore or stuff like that. And I would say, it's a competent but not amazing piece of horror film. I think you might enjoy just seeing, even if you just watch 10 minutes of it, you would quickly get a sense of how an environment is changed and looks different, when you change the kind of the laws of physics that govern it a little bit.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to have to check that out, I think.
The main thing you'll learn is that creepy dolls that live in all horror houses, I mean, they're pretty creepy when they're like sitting on a chair, but they're even creepier when they like float up behind your shoulder while you're swimming.
Yeah. I don't like, I want to put everybody on blast who owns one of those creepy dolls. like what, why? Right? Like what, so I mean, it's not everyone who bought those bought it ironically, right? Like I think nowadays you'd get one of those things and be like, yes, isn't it hilarious? It's this creepy doll and I like hide it in the closet, something. But it's like, back then, I mean, it's not like it just suddenly became creepy. Like they were terrifying back then too.
Yes. All right. Well, I have one other quick thing, Chris.
Oh, can I just, before we move on, I want to say I love the setup for that movie. A genre of YouTube video that I enjoy quite a bit is the like, let's go break into the abandoned whatever.
Yeah.
And like just film ourselves sort of walking around in there. I think as a GM, it can give you a lot of good, good gameplay material just for like, it is actually really scary and invigorating to go someplace that you're not supposed to. Just walk around, have almost no interactions whatsoever, and then leave.
Yes.
Leave the place. There's one video in particular, I might try to find it for the show notes, where they break into like it's like an abandoned Russian bomb shelter.
Okay.
Or something. But it's like a pretty big one. So they get in there and there's like stacked up like supplies and stuff too in there. So, these ancient like boxes of like shoes and like rations and stuff like that. So that part's super fun, but the way that they get in, they do have to crawl through like a pipe to get in. So it's like this really narrow passage, and just the whole time I'm watching, I'm going like, nope, I'm not going to do it, right?
Yes.
But yeah, it's good.
That's wonderful.
Okay, I digress, but it's a fun genre video.
Yeah, actually, please share that. I'd be kind of interested. I am not really familiar with this as a genre of on YouTube.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to blow your mind pretty soon then. Yeah, we'll drop a couple things in the show notes.
One other thing that this movie made me realize, which is a thing you can pull off in a movie that's really hard to do in a game, but a whole lot of the movie was just going into a room and being like, whoa, that's creepy, or whoa, that's cool. Just the kind of the thrill of exploring something, like you say, like the abandoned bunker. There's no monsters in there. There's nothing's going to attack you. And in this movie, nothing really starts attacking people until like an hour in. Most of the movie is just floating into an area and then marveling at how cool it is, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect most GMs wish we could make just that act of exploring cool places more fun in itself without having to fill it up with, quote, encounters.
When is the last time, and like we're totally getting off topic, but I'm wondering like when's the last time you asked a player or allowed players to in character react to a room?
I don't think I've ever really, explicitly done that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about where you're going.
I guess I'm thinking, right, like, so the thing that you mentioned, right, they go into this room and then all of them react in some way, right? They're influencers, right? So I'm sure it's like, they're talking to their subscribers or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm wondering like, if in character, if you ask your players to either like describe the room and then ask them to describe what their characters are thinking, or actually have their characters say something out loud to the party. I think that might be a fun way of both allowing people to role play a little bit, but then also like allowing the space to fill out with more detail as well. Like if you mention that there's a stairwell in there, like someone can point out like, oh, I wonder if that goes down to the whatever room or up to the whatever room, like that. So there's some, I think, description stuff like that, but then also if there are elements of that room that, people can either invent on the fly or otherwise connect back to their characters, it could be a fun role-playing moment.
That actually sounds like a fantastic idea, and I will try to remember to do that next time I'm running a game where that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop there because I don't want to keep derailing us before we get to our topic. Are you sitting on anything you wanted to chat about before we jump into the topic at hand?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't want to turn this into an Elden Ring podcast, but that's mostly what I've been doing for the past while. The one thing I did want to say, and I mentioned this on the Discord, my hot take on Elden Ring is that Elden Ring is the D&D game you think everybody else is playing.
Huh.
And I want to explain that a little bit more by saying that there's a lot of like going into dungeons and just clearing out the dungeon, beating the boss, getting the treasure, and then coming back out.
Yeah. And
it happens quite a bit, and it's super fun. And it's a great part of that game. And I think you and I have talked about how like it's a really great part of the game, but it's also like we're to the point where we don't really want to do that as much. We want to go and do the other stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's the sort of thing that like when you hear about D&D, you're like, oh, this is what people are doing, right? They're going into a dungeon, they're clearing it out, they're getting treasure, they're coming out, like those sorts of things. And I think it replicates that sort of idea of D&D better than any other game that I've played before. That's my long-winded explanation for the hot take. But it's it's good. I mean, I'm enjoying that game a lot. I think there's also a lot of like fantasy nonsense in the game too, which everybody sort of assumes everybody else's D&D game has a lot of this like fantasy nonsense that seems really esoteric and doesn't really connect, but it does sort of connect if you really spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Yeah.
When the reality is, I think that most D&D campaigns, the GMs need to vastly take down the level of complexity in their stories. And it's more like you have one very bad guy who wants one thing, and that's about all your players can keep track of over time.
Elden Ring, like the Dark Souls games and Bloodborne and stuff before it, I mean, they do have very complex and convoluted backstories and characters. And if you go, on YouTube or just Google, you see people doing these incredible deep dives. And they're not just making stuff up. That stuff, all of that info about the backstory, it's all in the games. However, you can play through the game like legitimately and not get any of it. And love the game and never engage with anything beyond the most immediately surface level story elements that are going on. And it works well because if you're the sort of person that needs that really complex fantasy backstory, it's there for you and you've got to work for it, and it'll be really rewarding when you dig it up. But if you're not, and probably most people are not, they just want to know who the bad guy is and maybe a couple of reasons why they need to be stopped, and that's it. The games operate equally well on that level too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I promised we wouldn't turn into an Elden Ring podcast, but we accidentally did for a little bit, so I apologize to you. All right. Well, we've avoided the topic at hand, I think, a little bit too long because I actually really like this question, and I want to have plenty of time to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, Peter Dillman came on. He did a Kickstarter recently for Dillman's Dungeon, which is like an Air D&D, I think is the name that he gave it. This is like a place you can rent out to actually that's specifically designed for running your own games for like a weekend or something like that. So it's super cool. He was successful with his funding, so that's going to get, I think they're going to open up pretty soon. So you can go check them out if you want to. But he came on and he left us with this really good topic of making an interesting shop. I made a joke sort of earlier about like Costco. And the thinking about that joke, like Costco is not an interesting shop because Costco just has sort of everything that you need, I think. So this is my opening statement, is that interesting shops do not have everything available to you in them. I think that they have a more discrete list of items in them than absolutely anything that you want. So I guess what's your reaction to that?
No, I totally agree. I think that's a very good statement. Let me back us up even a tiny bit more. And I find it for myself when we talk about these things, it's a lot of these design challenges are like design an interesting, fill in the blank. And lurking behind that challenge is the fact that a lot of these things are not interesting.
Yes.
What makes a shop not interesting? So a shop that has everything you need is not interesting. Like what else makes this something that is not fun in RPGs? And we've had one or two episodes way back in the past about shopping in RPGs, and I think the consensus is it's a real red flag. It could be a real red flag of like you're entering into the boring zone. It doesn't need to be, but why are shops not interesting?
Yeah, I think anything that feels like it could be a chain, right? So like you have, I don't know, like the Sword Coast Quickie Mart. It's like, anything that could be construed as that. So like something that has no personality outside of the personality that all of the stores have necessarily, right? So there's comfort in that for us in real life who just like, you need to get milk. Like Kroger already like has it in this specific spot. That's great, right? Like you want that. But I think, for me, an interesting shop is something that feels unique, has a little bit of personality, and I think is run by an entity that is also fun to interact with.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And so I say entity in a very, very specific sense, right? Like it's like this could be a person. It could be an automated shop in some way. Like there could just be like there's some sort of magical void that you throw money into and your items come out, right? Like there has to be like the way in which you purchase stuff or ask for items and stuff, I think has to be fun and memorable.
Okay. I think that's a good way to lay it out. I was going to say there's probably also times though when you're like, look, I just want to buy a sword. I don't want a 20-minute role-playing experience with the quirky shop owner.
Yeah. Okay. Let's assume that wherever the shop is, the shop next door is like the Costco equivalent, right? So you can get all the standard items, right? Like you don't have to worry about that. Like if you want a bag of ball bearings, they have that. They have 50 feet of rope. They have, standard sword, that sort of stuff. So this shop is going to be something that has something extra in it.
Okay. So what does this shop sell?
That's a good question. Let's do our standard thing. Let's kind of pick a genre of some sort that this is going to exist in.
Okay.
I am thinking of Call of Cthulhu. I don't know why. So maybe we're setting this in like 1920s Americana. Does that Does that work for you, or you want to do something different?
Yeah, well, let's do that. I like stepping outside of the D&D style fantasy that has defined a couple of our past episodes.
Yes, let's do that. So it's like 1920s, somewhere in America. I have a couple ideas, and I can just kind of rapid fire throw them out. Yeah. But do you have anything else that you want to?
Why don't you start by tossing out your ideas? And not like toss them out, although we may wind up having to toss them out.
Yeah, here I'll delicately place them, and you pick them up and just chuck them out the window, and we'll keep going. Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe something that's like a little bit more occult oriented. So the thing that I always like about those sort of settings is that like secret knowledge. I'm also thinking about like a shop that only exists at a certain time, like in a certain time frame and space. I also think I want the shop to have a proprietor. Not necessarily human, but like some sort of like humanoid proprietor.
So I want to just throw out that the shop could sell services as well as objects.
Okay.
I don't have anything in particular in mind. Your typical like kind of Call of Cthulhu style weird shop is going to be some sort of antique books shop. What can we do that's not the antique and culty bookstore that still fits into that genre or vibe?
What if it's not antiques? Like, what if it's new? Like, the shop is not trafficking in, like, ancient knowledge, but it's like someone's got to write the book the first time. Like, what if it's just full of, like, first edition books that, like, no one's quite sure the importance of them quite yet? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so, like, this is, like, where, you know, you're some, like, occult expert in 1920s. You've just written your thesis, and it's like, well, I mean, I got to get some money for this. So you sell it to this guy for $1,000, and then they turn around and sell it for more.
Like fringe modern bookshop.
Maybe that's not as fun.
No. let's keep going. So here's I'm going to also throw out some ideas. What if like it's such a staple of the genre that all of these books are like there's only a handful of copies of them in the world because most of them were lost or banned or whatever. You know, what if this shop had something to do with being able to get access to books that have been destroyed or were lost?
Oh, that's interesting.
The last copy was destroyed 500 years ago, but we might have it on our shelf somehow.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, what if it is like anytime a book is destroyed, it somehow ends up here?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like, yeah, so they have, I mean, if it was modern times, right, they have like 10 billion copies of Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows, you know, in the back, but they also have like the one copy of, like Cthulhu's cookbook that was destroyed 1,000 years ago.
I like the idea that it's not just like an occult bookshop. Any book that has been lost can be in the shelves.
It's almost like the Infinite Library. Who wrote that?
Borges.
Yeah, Borges. Like it's like that, but it's for like any book that's ever been, you know, destroyed. or like there's individual pages from books that like someone like if someone like has ripped out a page of a book and like burned it, there's like individual pages there. There's like a whole section that's like coffee stains.
Oh,
coffee stain books. Okay,
I'm intrigued at the pieces of books element. Just having the copy of the book there doesn't seem as exciting to me. But I'm intrigued by like the pages. Like we have a page from every book that has been lost or destroyed. I don't know.
Okay, I like that's this is a fun idea. Yeah, so it's like so anytime in history a page of a book has been destroyed or a portion of a book has been destroyed, some temporal magic nonsense happens and it ends up in this place. We should probably come up with like a somewhat plausible, I don't know, not a plausible, an explanation for why that is.
So the PCs need to be able to get something they can use from this shop. So one page from like the Necronomicon is interesting, but like that's not dependably useful, I guess. How could we angle it a little bit so that it can be something that PCs like benefit a little bit more concretely from purchasing? And later on, I want to talk about this later, but we need to talk about like what is the price you pay for these books? You know, like what's the
oh, it is a grave price.
What's the currency or the cost? Yeah. Anyway, I like this like pages or pieces of books, but how can we make it a little bit more useful to the PCs that they would actually plunk down their hard-earned cash or sell their soul or whatever?
Yeah, I think that might be kind of left up to the GM to come up with an actual hook for it. But I mean, I think the way that you approach this is that they find a book that has the first half of a spell, and then like the second half of it is torn out or burned.
Okay.
Like there's like burned edges on it, or you even start them pick anything that could have been in the Library of Alexandria, for example.
Okay, yeah.
It's like all that's there. Or like has the potential to be there if you get there first, right? So then there's a time pressure too. To find
that's
this place.
interesting. Do the PCs know, and do they have to know in advance? Like, I want page 51 from the Necronomicon, or do they just be like, I want your page that you have from the Necronomicon?
This is let's bring in the proprietor.
Okay.
So I guess how would they act in this space? So I think they're going to have to be somewhat supernatural, or I mean, maybe it's just like run like a used bookshop. Like, yeah. Right, there's people that work at this place. So if you have a potentially like, tens of millions, if not infinite number of pages and stuff, like how would you catalog that? Or how would you like fulfill requests? I think they would say like, you're going to have to do way better than that page of the Necronomicon that we have. Like I have 10 copies of stuff that people have said is the Necronomicon, and like none of them actually are. Like, how am I supposed to tell? Unless it's just like a magical, like they know where everything is.
I'm drawn to the idea of the proprietor in general being like a down-to-earth, I'm running a business here person, and not a kindly old guy who knows exactly what bookshelf your thing is on. Is very businesslike and practical in their approach, and doesn't have a lot of time for the nonsense of all of the weirdos that keep coming into the shop. Asking for stuff.
They'd rather be a manager at a Costco, but this is their lot.
Yes.
So do you want that person to be immortal or supernatural, or is this someone who is like very much just, human and has taken it over from like their parents or something?
I'm leaning towards the latter because the idea we have of this shop is very supernatural already. And I wonder if making other aspects of it more mundane feeling might help a little bit. And also like a blatantly like I'm a magic immortal with like elf who runs a magic bookshop would not fit into most Call of Cthulhu style games.
So maybe I'm sure there's a some sort of god of ultimate knowledge or something like that. Like, so maybe this is acolytes of this god end up running the shop. Like this is just sort of like one of the things that they can do as part of their service. So I think there's probably going to be like that person, and then maybe like a couple of like other workers in there, just like other people that can work and do stuff, run errands, and also be sort of the next person to take over. Okay, so that proprietor, are they like, let's give them a couple descriptions, I guess. Right. So you said like business, like maybe just the nuance there is they don't have time for this.
Yeah.
So like whenever you talk to them, like they don't have time for you. Like
what I'm kind of picturing is like, how when you go to like a new city you haven't been to before and you're trying to use their public transportation system.
Yeah.
And the bus or the train driver doesn't have time to teach you how to use it, and like that awful feeling of like trying to figure it out. The bus driver is looking at you expectantly waiting for correct change, but you don't know how much change it is and what denominations their little machine takes and stuff. So that sort of like great. Slight exasperation if you don't know what's going on.
Maybe even when the players hear of this shop beforehand, like they're given a list of rules about like how they're supposed to interact there, and it turns out that all of them are just like subtly wrong in some way. So it is like don't look at the guy in the eye. Like you're not supposed to look at him in the eye, like because that's what the code says, and like you get there and he's like, why are you like look at me? Like just say this
is a little bit of tangent. Well, it is a total tangent. One of my wife and I's favorite restaurants is this cheapo breakfast place in Hyde Park, Chicago. It's called Valois, and it's a wonderful place, but you have to get in line, and like the world's crankiest looking cooks are sitting behind the counter, like waiting for you to deliver your order. Like if you have questions about like what ingredients are in this, like you're in the wrong place. You're supposed to have figured that out like before you got up to the line, and
even though there's no way to figure it
out. Sorry for the tangent. So I like that. Maybe you have to be kind of part of a special clientele to get access to this collection of lost pages or whatever. And there's rules for communicating to the person that, like, I'm not here just to buy the new Tom Clancy novel, and I need access to your elite collection.
I think that's really good. Yeah, so I think the proprietor, I think I understand who they are somewhat. You know, like, so the GM can skin them however they really need to. But I think that, like, yeah, getting those core things of like, there are rules, why don't you understand them? I'm a busy person, even though it's like they're busy cataloging, they're not busy with like people coming in and out all the time. Because I think we need to define, how do you get to the shop? And so one idea I have is that, like, to get to the shop, you have to give something to the shop of value, right? So, like, you have to, like, if you have the Necronomicon, you're looking for page 52, you have to give up page 53. You have to burn page 53.
I had the exact thought that, like, for every page you get, you have to tear a page out of a beloved book that you own.
Mm-hmm.
It would be interesting if you have to provide another page from the same work you want.
The same work, or like equal or lesser value.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but like maybe it's like more. So if you want one page, you have to give up two, and it has to be from the thing that's most important to you, right? Like if the thing you need is the most important thing, you have to give up the most important thing. If the thing that you need is like not that important, you have to give something that's like not that important. But it's always got to be like a little bit more than what you want.
Yeah.
So they have stuff coming in. So do you find the shop then by like burning those pages, or is the shop there, you walk in and you have to hand those pages to them? Like what's the mechanism?
You know, I am a sucker for the shop exists, you know, slightly outside of regular reality, and you have to walk down the alleys and turn at specific points and backtrack, and then the shop is there. You know, I'm kind of a sucker for that sort of thing.
Yeah, what's fun? Like, so I think that, like, yeah, so like backtracking and stuff, like what's a fun way for the actual entrance to appear, to happen? Do they have to like go in and out of a shop like 3 times?
Yeah.
Like or something?
Yes.
Yeah, so like you do this complicated thing, and then you have to go into this bookstore. Like you have to like fully enter, you have to like greet someone, leave, go back and greet the same person. They get like increasingly angry. And then the third time you come in, then it's like a different place.
Let's have a list of weird things that you have to go in. Yeah, and the first time you go in, you have to greet the first male that you see on the left side of the store, and you have to ask him a very specific question. Then you have to leave, and then you have to come back in, and then you have to go, I don't know, you have to go find a specific book and take it off the shelf and put it back in upside down, and then you have to leave again, and then you have to go back in. I think GMs could come up with some really fun rules.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And too, if it's if there are rules that like break social norms enough, I think it'd be fun if it's like the person in this actual bookstore is just like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Like, why do people keep coming in here and doing this and then leaving, and then I never see them ever again? I mean, at least for me, I find joy in those sorts of like challenges as a GM of like, yeah, like you're having to break social norms, or like someone's clearly exasperated with you, but like you have this goal that involves getting past their exasperation.
Yep.
Like, because I think you get to like do a small test of the player's ability to sort of see the thing through.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's not just like they're going to randomly stumble on this. They really have to push.
If we are going to have a shop that's worth visiting, I like the idea of kind of making a little bit of a challenge. I think it would be a fun adventure to hear about this shop and then have to figure out where it is and what those rules are. That's like one or two great adventures right there, and haven't even gotten to the shop yet. What is
so like one other idea I had, maybe this is like too complicated. The shop also appears whenever there's a great fire at a library or something like that. Like the shop will, like, you can enter in that way, in like sort of the normal way. But then maybe like, it also appears whenever there's a great fire at a library or a bookstore. You know, some place where a lot of like knowledge gets consumed very quickly. There's also like echoes of that shop that show up. Like maybe it's like echoes of the people like coming to collect stuff. There's some sort of like collection mechanism, something like that. Because like if it's too like somewhat random in order to stumble on this place in the first time, I think there has to be some sort of in-game mythology for like, how did the first person figure out?
I like that. And the PCs could track sightings of the shop or whatever. I don't know. I think that you could do some interesting stuff with that.
Yeah, if there was like some sort of fire in game, and then like one PC notices off in the distance there's like this building that sort of is like through the flames that has shown up, and then as soon as the fire goes out, like the building disappears.
Oh yeah.
yeah, you could like seed it in there.
I mean, at some point in a campaign, anytime some destruction is happening that would involve the destruction of books, like you could just plant a weird site, a sighting of a weird person or the shop or something like that going through the wreckage, or I don't know, and then later you could circle back and
maybe inside maybe it's the people who work at the shop too, right? It's like, so you have them in the fire actually like collecting pages or something like that. If anybody approaches them to like ask them what they're doing, like the person will just like hand them a card, right? Oh. Like that's how they find it.
You know what the PCs are going to do? They're going to burn down a library to like lure the shopkeeper.
Yeah, they are, but that's fine. They've already burned down a warehouse yesterday, so why not a library today?
What if the best way to get access to learn about all the latest rules to get into the shop is to create destruction of books that lures, although if you base your campaign around book burning, you get into some trouble.
Yeah, that's a dangerous.
Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, you get them back, right? Like you can get them back later. Okay, so I like this. So we have this shop that sells like the destroyed pages from all books, right? So it's run by this like cantankerous business-like person who doesn't have time for you. That collects stuff by anytime it's burned. It goes there. You can find out knowledge of it by like anytime there's a great fire or something like that of books, like they show up. Okay, so like the only thing we haven't, I think, 100% settled on is like payment, right? Yeah. So like there's the idea of maybe you have to give a couple pages that are important to you. That feels maybe too transactional. Is there some other mechanism that they could pay with, or maybe they don't have to pay? Maybe it's just like, well, we've collected this so someone can get it back, like, so you can just come and get it if you want it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, I do like the symmetry of if you want a page, you have to give a page, and the value of the page that you give to the shop increases the odds you'll get a really good, juicy page from the book you want, right? I do like that.
Yeah.
But I wonder if if you are not willing or you're unable to share a valuable page, maybe there's like a service you can provide to the shop. Whatever. If you can't pay at a restaurant, they make you wash dishes, at least in the movies. So what would a bookstore like this have you do? What service would be like payment if you just don't have any valuable books and you need a page?
Okay, this is maybe a little too high concept, but I'm going to channel like Kyle Latino here. Like, what if there is in the back room, like there are people that like eat pages of books that should never be shared again? Right? It's like whatever, because there's like some sort of god that they're running the shop for, right? So there's going to be books that like are blasphemous in the back. Like if you don't have a way to pay, like one way to pay is to like eat some of these blasphemous pages to like take them out of the universe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I really like it. That would be a little bit of a problem in like a Call of Cthulhu game, because the PCs are probably looking for a blasphemous text.
Yes. No, I actually think this is a great like hook. Is like, are you going to risk never being able to come back here ever again to get that one page that's blasphemous? Or
and if you're eating like a blasphemous page, the GM should have a great time inflicting consequences on your PC's like health and well-being.
Yes, yeah.
Because chugging down a piece of Necronomicon cannot be good for your
probably
body
not.
Or your soul.
Not advisable.
Okay, I really like that, and yeah, I kind of like that the proprietor might have a quirky definition also of what's a blasphemous book that needs to be taken out of the time stream.
Yeah, oh for sure. Okay, I like that. I think that is an interesting shop. I would say so. Yeah, I think, like, as you said, I mean, it's almost like the more interesting the shop is, the more game time is going to get devoted to it.
Yeah,
in some way. Yeah, because like, I mean, I think you're going to have a couple of sessions of lead up to that shop. Probably a session itself in the shop, and then they might return. They might do something to where they're never admitted ever again. There's lots of different ways that could go.
Yeah, well, think about the way this has kind of shaped out as we've discussed it. The shop kind of becomes uninteresting when you finally get to the point where you're just buying something. But there's a ton of story ideas in getting to the point of being in the shop to buy something. You could have a blast having the PCs learn about and track down the shop. And after that, you probably wouldn't really focus on it too much, because a repeat trip to it would, once they know how to get there and what the rules are, that's just a matter of like Sure,
Yeah.
you do it. You find the shop again, and you buy a new
Mhm.
page, and you pay your price. So one thing I like about this also though is that I think it does translate across genres pretty well. Like I
Mhm.
think in a fantasy setting, this could be probably spell books from famous
Mhm.
magicians or wizards or whatever, and in D&D, there's kind of a maybe a more immediate price of handing over spells from tearing out pages from your spell book to get pages from a
Yes.
famous wizard's lost spell book, right? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But even in a
Yeah.
sci-fi thing, it could be hacking. They can dig up info about anything, but you have to
Mhm.
provide info of equal value or something like that. I don't know. I think there's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of different ways you can
There's
spin
like
it.
yeah memory chips, right? It's just like a bunch of memory chips on
Yes,
the walls.
yes.
One other thing that I was thinking about too is like, for the players, I think this could give you some other like interesting mechanics to play with. Like, so if you are in a situation where someone is trying to take a book that's really important to you and like you're on the run, you could burn it while you're on the run and then go back to the place later and
Oh,
it's there.
interesting.
So like you have to pay the price right to get it back at that point, but like you've been able to take it out of the situation. And then it's like, well, then who else knows about this place? Who's gotten there before you? Who's going to come after you? Like all this sort of stuff, especially if you have to give up some pages that are important to you. It's like, well, now those are on the open market. Like, is that a bad
Yes.
thing? That like, are you going to stay one step ahead of whoever is chasing you? If you're giving them like super important knowledge for the knowledge you need to take the next step. So,
Well, I think to sum up, we have
Mhm.
some great story hooks centered around this shop.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if you use a shop like this in your game, we'd love to hear about it and to hear how you tweaked it to fit whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and also, so I'm going to throw this out there. Like, so I don't think we should do this on air. If you have a good name for this shop, let us know. So, shoot us an email, drop a note on Discord or something like that. I think this place needs a really quirky, cool name that's really going to stick in the players' minds, right? That they can hear about this place and then like have to find it. Okay, all right. Well, I think we should wrap up there. This has been a super fun conversation. Yeah, thanks, Andy. I like this one.
Yeah, this is a good one. Thank you, Peter, for pitching us this design challenge.
Yes, yeah, so good. Well, I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
And remember, if your player's having fun, you're a great GM.